we're going to talk about what to look for when finding a therapist. I think that's such an important thing because now that therapy is, though still somewhat stigmatized, we're working our way out of that. And a lot of people are now starting to come around to the idea of therapy. But some people just don't know where to start. What do I look for? What kind of therapist do I go to? Do I go to a social worker? Do I go to a marriage and family therapist? Do I go to a licensed professional counselor? Like, I'm confused and I get it. It's a lot. Now, if you're new to this page, just know that here I talk about all things personal development. I talk about mental health. I talk about relationships. If you've never met me before and you're like, who is this woman talking on my screen? My name is Mel Walker. I am a marriage and family therapist intern, which simply means that I'm working towards my master's. And once that's done, I'll be working towards getting my license, which means that I'll be able to practice independently of a supervisor. If personal development, mental health, relationship stuff, if you like this kind of stuff, go ahead and hit the subscription button. That way you'll know every time I come out with a new video and you'll be able to keep up to date with all the things I got going on. Before I got into this field, I was completely confused as well. I remember one of my very first therapists, I used to call him doctor. Like, I thought he was a doctor. He was a social worker. So, no, it's not a bad thing at all. It's just that there's just so much lack of education around what to look for in a therapist, what a therapist does, what are their responsibilities. There are some things that a social worker does that a marriage and family therapist may not do. But overall, the gist is that we all provide therapy. It kind of boils down to what you're looking for, what do you need, and so forth. So let's just dive into the points and we can talk a little bit about what to look for when looking for a therapist. The first point, professional qualification. What qualifies someone to be a therapist? So as I said earlier, I'm a marriage and family therapist intern. So I don't have my master's as yet, but I'm legally allowed to see clients because I'm under supervision of someone who has their license to practice therapy in the state of Virginia. That's where I am, Virginia. So you want to make sure that your therapist is properly trained and licensed. And if they're not licensed, they should at least be like an intern or a resident, which means that they're working towards licensure and they have a supervisor who is licensed. So that's the indication that they're getting the necessary training, they're getting the necessary education to approach working with clients in an appropriate way. So that's something you definitely want to look for. Also, you want to make sure that this person is authorized to practice in your state. Most therapists, they don't play around where that's concerned, but it never hurts to double check. So do your research. Do your research. Make sure your therapist is someone who is licensed or under supervision in the state where you reside. Next point, specialization. I feel like I talked about this too on either another episode or a podcast or something. The misconception is that because you're a therapist, you're an expert and you know everything and you can take care of everything. No, the reality is that therapists are human beings. We're people. We have trauma too. We go through struggles. And there might be a therapist who may not feel comfortable working with a couple where infidelity was an issue because they probably dealt with that and they're triggered by it. There might be therapists who might not be able to work with someone who has substance abuse issues because they may have had or have a family member going through that and they just can't deal with it. One thing that's always recommended, though, is that as therapists, we find our groove, we find our sweet spot, we find that place where we excel and we strive. And for some people, like myself, that's couples. For other people, they want to work with women. For other people, they prefer children. For other people, they want to focus on people who struggle with substance issues. So if you have a specific issue or a specific concern, try to find a therapist who specializes in that. So for example, if you're a woman and you're struggling with fertility issues, you can find a therapist who specializes in helping women who have fertility issues. If you're a man, you're struggling with depression and anxiety, you want to find a therapist who specializes in depression and anxiety in the male community. Believe it or not, there is a therapist out there for everyone. And sometimes we find therapists who don't match with what we're dealing with or match with what we're going through, and that's fine. We can always go back and find a therapist that's within that niche, within that specialty that we're looking for. So the next point, their approach. Now, most people really don't understand this part, but I'll explain it briefly. Every therapist has a different way with how they approach their clients. They use different techniques that we learned in school, some that we learned after school, and they use that to help move the therapy process along. So some people might use the solution focused theory. Some people might use the emotionally focused therapy model. Some people might use Imago. Some people might use ACT, DBT. The list goes on. I know a very popular one right now that, of course, it requires certification, but a lot of people like it is EMDR. So it's just a lot of different ways in which a therapist can help you get to your breakthrough, get to the goal. The next point is personal fit. Now, we talk about this all the time. I've talked about the DSW theory. If you haven't heard about it, again, I might link that episode right here somewhere because it's important for you to understand that not because you go to a therapist mean you're going to automatically like the therapist and they're going to like you and you're going to be the perfect fit like peanut butter and jelly. That's not always the case. But in the same breath, it shouldn't be the end all be all. I've encouraged potential clients, hey, if this don't work out between me and you, the least I could do is help you find another therapist. So there's that. Availability. Now, this is a big deal and it has improved somewhat since the pandemic for the main cause that teletherapy is now an option. You find that because of work, school, other obligations, you find that some people's schedules may not align with what the therapist has to offer, and that's fine. But with teletherapy, this has allowed clients to meet with their therapist like early in the morning before they go to work or late in the evening after they put the kids to bed. It just provides a lot more flexibility. I would recommend once you are in a groove and you're comfortable with your therapist, make ongoing appointments. So if you want to see your therapist every week at the same time, book it now because there's a possibility the time may not be available again if you wait till next week. So the next point, the cost. Now, this is the part where I know a lot of people are having hangups. Therapy can be expensive, honestly. Even as a therapist, I can say that it can be expensive. And it doesn't help that in a lot of cases, our insurances aren't as robust with dealing with mental health as it is with almost anything else. The way I see it is if you have to use your insurance to get an annual checkup or you have to use your insurance to go get your teeth cleaned, you should still have that same option when it comes to taking care of your mental health. But then on the other hand, there are some people who can't afford insurance at all. So this is not even an option. We have a lot of work to do before we can get to a place where mental health care can be accessible to everyone while also paying therapists what they deserve because this is hard work. You would never go to a doctor's office or to an emergency room and have them remove a bullet and give them $20. Like, no. You never go to a dentist and after putting on or taking off braces, you give them $5. No. It should be the same when it comes to your mental wellness. Therapists need to be paid fairly, and that's something we could talk about in another video. But also, the burden of the cost should not necessarily be on the client either. So this is something we could go back and forth about. We can have different perspectives on, but I feel like there are points on both sides. And the goal at the end is just for everybody to be able to have access to mental health care. That's it. So my final point, you might not know where to start. And I know I said earlier that you could check out Psychology Today. Was it this video I said that? I can't even keep up anymore. But Psychology Today is a good place to start if you are looking for therapists in your area. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I would love to hear from you because the benefit is to help you and to provide tools that's going to be beneficial for you. So with that being said, we're going to wrap this episode up and I'm going to talk to y'all next week. Take care.